Yeah.
Great, great. So good morning and thanks for joining us. I'm Dr. Arlen Myers. I'm President and CEO of the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, and welcome to this session on digital health side gigs. We're pleased to have some people who've been there, done that, and helping people find side gigs, particularly in digital health and med tech. So, Mike, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Maffey. I am the founding partner and president of Iridium HR. We were the first telehealth recruiting company in the industry. We started in 2013. We're based here in Tampa with about 8 other offices nationwide. So we specialize in both clinical and non-clinical roles for all types of healthcare positions. I'll let the other 2 gentlemen that are part of this presentation introduce themselves.
Okay, Brandon.
No, good morning, everybody. I'm Brandon Maffey. I'm the Vice President of Client Services here at Iridium HR. So my scope is really to oversee certainly the client side of things, but with that, overseeing the overall recruitment process for our clients as well. So excited to give you guys the information here and hope to bring some value.
Great, Peter.
Good morning, Peter Kaplan, Vice President of Business Development. I have a background in telehealth since the mid-90s and have worked with organizations around the country to help design and build sustainable telehealth, telemedicine programs.
Great. So thanks for joining us. The what we intend to teach and the learning objectives for this session are basically 3. One is to get a sense of the overall market in terms of the supply and demand for digital health talent. The second is some tips on technique based on the years of experience you've heard our participants have, and what's the best way to do this. And finally, what do you need to know about working with a search firm or an executive search or staffing company because you might not be familiar or have experience with doing that. So without further ado, Mike, you want to take it away?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Arlen. Yeah, this we'll spend about 20 minutes on the subject. And then if you have any questions, feel free to include them on the chat box. And we'll be able to get to them before the end of the presentation. So the first topic is, what is going on right now outside in the industry, and it's pretty interesting. I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but we all know COVID changed everything in regards to healthcare. It also changed the way that we look at business, even though we've been doing healthcare for about 10 years. But it certainly has created a lot of different types of positions for physicians, and a lot of them are in the non-clinical type roles. And we have, over the last several years, have worked on these types of roles. So when you look at it from a demand standpoint, in a non-medical, what I would consider a non-practice, giving medical advice to patients, there certainly is foremost the consulting side of the business. It is actually, believe it or not, growing. It's just a matter of where do you find those positions, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But even those startups are down, meaning that we're not seeing what we saw during the COVID situation. Companies that are non-startups that have been around for years, so hospitals, healthcare organizations, non-healthcare organizations, are looking for medical type advice and consulting at a very high level. But again, this is just an example of what we are seeing out there as far as the growth is concerned. Certainly consulting is a big part of that. Some other areas to really consider and are reviewing our medical surveys, medical reviewers, looking at ways of additional income or different types of options to look for. Medical surveys, medical reviewers are another area that is growing. It's surprising when we talk to physicians, and we talk to physicians every day in the course of trying to fill different types of roles. But again, these consulting, the medical reviewers, completing medical surveys are some of the areas to really look into in this side gig, as we're calling it, situation. And we've got some areas that I'll show you to go to where you can find these types of positions. Legal consulting is something that you're probably already aware of, but we have filled over the past 6 months several opportunities for MDs in specialist field to do legal consulting, whether it be for trial cases or for law firms who are hiring by the hour or part-time for this type of role. So that is another area to really look into. Expertise, sharing your expertise. We are seeing a growth in MDs at all levels and all specialties needed for podcasts, which are rapidly growing. If you go out and you search for podcast or medical podcast, you'll see a lot of those out there. And there are a lot of requests for medical doctors, medical specialists to be a part of these, whether it be podcasts, whether it be opportunities to share information through articles, medical briefs, etc. These are all well-paid type positions. And finally, everybody's aware of this, but this is really growing, is locum tenens. I know that's the clinical side, but we work with several telehealth organizations that are looking to utilize MDs in rural areas where there are not a lot of specialists. So they may work several days a week, whether it be remotely or whether it be on site, even though you certainly would be practicing on site at a hospital. I did want to mention that because I still interpret that as a side gig for someone who wants to only work maybe a couple of days a week. But the rural market is exceptionally looking for expertise in the medical field. So this is what we're seeing as a company. This is what we're dealing with on a daily basis as we see requests from our clients that these areas that I just mentioned that maybe you haven't even thought of in the past are things that you can actively get involved in and actually get compensated, very well for.
So let me
But-
ask you a question. And again, if you have a question from the audience, we have 17 or 18 people in the chat, so good for us and good for you. If you have a question, raise your hand or put it in the chat. My comment is that, given all these attempts to figure out work from the office or work from home, in terms of the supply side, that is the doctor who's looking for one of these opportunities. The data indicates that the vast majority of women, LGBTQ, disabled people, and other people with certain learning disorders don't want to work in the office for a number of reasons, not the least of which has to do with childcare, home, all the home responsibilities, all that other stuff. Is that something that you're seeing reflected in your view of the market?
I think in general, what we're seeing, aside from what you just mentioned, is just overall, it's the education of the physician. This is something new, meaning that when you talk about the medical profession several years ago, you could talk in generalities, but now it's opened up a Pandora's box, so to speak. And so what we've seen are physicians who ask us questions about uh, whether it's remote, whether it be remote work or not, about technology. How can I best prepare myself for doing a different type of role remotely? I'm not used to it. I don't know how to prepare a resume. I don't know where to go to find these jobs. So when you talk about supply and demand, we find that more often is we're educating the doctors a lot more about these positions,
Right.
whereas in the
Yeah.
past, it may have not been that way.
Yeah, that's my experience too. Okay, great. So let's move on to the second item, which is, okay, there are lots of opportunities. Yes, there are, challenges which you can overcome. So how do you do that? What's the best way how do you get one of these gigs? What are your tips?
Yeah, well, the great thing about technology is we know there is something for everyone on the internet, and where physicians have asked us in the past, where can I go? Where is a community of like-minded individuals? Where can I go to not only be a part of and get advice from fellow physicians, but where can I find information on positions, side gig positions? Where can I find information just in general that could help make me more attractive for these roles? The first two things that we always tell a physician is you have to be on LinkedIn, your profile has to be updated, and you have to have a current resume. And in the case of a physician, resumes in a lot of cases, what we've seen is something very new to them, especially someone who is very tenured. And so, but it's a must when you are marketing yourself. Everyone goes to LinkedIn. And so the ability to make sure you've got a profile, that it's update, it has your accomplishments, it has your journalistic writings, research, etc. All of this needs to take place. But there are some great online resources, and I'll provide these separately. So even if you want to write them down now, you can. But there are some great online resources that we know about that you can go to that I think are very good in regards to looking from a side gig standpoint. There's actually a website called physiciansidegigs.com. So physiciansidegigs.com was started in 2016 by a physician, and they have hundreds of thousands of doctors out there, and they have a lot of information, not only on posting jobs that are side gig jobs for physicians, but also information on how you can get these jobs. So it's one of the websites that we always recommend that physicians go to really learn about what is going on in that vertical or in that industry. So it's physiciansidegigs.com. Another one that has over 1 million physicians as members is called Sermo, SERMO.com. Again, it is another website where you have a community of physicians that are sharing all types of information on positions and jobs that we discussed earlier that may be available, etc. And when you go to both of these websites, they'll link you to physician groups that are dedicated to side gig jobs. There's one on Facebook, and it's called Physician Side Gigs. And I believe they have over 200,000 members, and it's a very active group. So when I talk about social media, I think it's very important to really look at not only the sites that I just mentioned, and actually there's one more. It's called physicianonfire.com. That's a third one. But these are great vehicles to really learn about what these side gigs are, who is hiring, et cetera. So I strongly recommend that you explore the three that I mentioned. It'll lead you to Facebook groups that you should also become part of. One of the best ways, when you think about looking for a job, and we'll dive into this a little bit more in section 3 about executive search firms. I went out this morning and I just typed in, I'm in Tampa, Florida. I just typed in physician consulting jobs in Google. Came up with 53 consulting jobs here in the Tampa area that all types of organizations that we're looking for. So I give you all this information. There's a lot more that is out there, but this is a very good start, because I certainly don't want to overwhelm you, but these are some of the top sites to go to when you're looking at educating yourself on side gigs and also looking at side gig opportunities.
Yeah, just to amplify a bit on the things that you mentioned that I put in the chat, my view is that the idea is to get people to find you, not vice versa. It's helpful to look at all these sites and resources and opportunities and everything else, but there is a lot of noise out there. So the basic idea is if you're trying to break through the static, you have to sort of build your personal brand to validate your worth. And we don't have time to go into all of those things, but certainly a podcast or, the price of entry these days is a LinkedIn profile and all the things that Mike mentioned. Now, most doctors are used to creating a CV. And there's a difference between a CV, the purpose and the structure and the content of a CV versus a resume versus a LinkedIn profile. The point of the LinkedIn profile is to tell your story. It's not a CV. It's not a compendium of everything you've published or done since you were 5 years old. It's to tell your story and give people a sense of your persona, who you are, what do you like, your background, that kind of thing. It's not a CV. A CV, as we know, is a compendium basically of inputs. Here's what I wrote. Here's what I did. Here's what I taught. Here's how many, what I did clinically. Here are the organizations I belong to, the usual stuff. And the purpose of the CV fundamentally is to get promoted. It's not to sell yourself. It's not to get a job. In some instances. Now, in some places, they want to know all the ins and outs of, are you a key opinion leader, and how many journal articles in the New England Journal have you published, et cetera. But that's generally not the case in what we're talking about. And the third, the resume, is actually, to Mike's point, it's a description of what you have accomplished, results, not necessarily inputs. What have you accomplished? And are you a good fit for the job? And the best way to write the resume is to look at the job description. The job description, and ask for the job description. So I want to be an advisor to a med tech company. Well, okay, you get a response. Great. You say, please send me the job description. And they will tell you, sometimes, not always, that's another problem, but usually they'll say, here's what we're looking for. And, we want this person with this education and basically knowledge, skills, abilities, and competencies to do the job. Those key words in the job description should inform your resume. We need a person who can open doors for pilot projects and go-to-market launch. Well, what have you done, or what competency do you have to do that? Do you have a big network? Have you have previous experience launching stuff? Do you have sales and marketing experience? What sort of transferable skills do you have that match the job description? So I will stop there, but I think those are two important points that will help ensure your success.
Yeah, Arlen, I agree with you on the job description and putting in key components of what you should have on your resume. And one of the primary reasons for that is technology now is screening resumes. So you may be exceptionally qualified for a position but before someone even sees it, it may have gone through an applicant tracking system. And if those key defined words aren't in your resume, it may bypass you. It's unfortunate. But everyone now is trying to utilize technology on the upfront screening process as much as they can. Now, when it comes to the side gig jobs, that's probably going to be even more prevalent than if we were recruiting you for a full-time practice or bedside position, because now you're more prone to be seeing technology doing this. If you are hesitant about creating your own LinkedIn profile, or if you are hesitant about doing your own resume, we do have several recommendations. I won't go out and say them out loud, but certainly contact us. Some people out there do a bad job, some do a very good job. But if you need help doing that, there's certainly experts out there that can do that. One of the things I forgot to mention as far as a side gig that we're seeing an increase in demand for is on the academic side, where they are looking for instructors or even part-time, full-time, and also consultants. We've seen a big increase in that area, especially on the oncology side. That seems to be a specialty that is in great demand. I'm not saying that the others aren't, but the academic world, we are seeing opportunities for physicians in that area. So that leads me to the last point, which is how do I utilize search firms? What's the difference between an executive search firm and, let's say, a firm like Aleadium HR, even though we do recruit executives? So executive search firms can be known as headhunters. There are some very good physician-only executive firms out there. And what they specialize in is two things. Number one, working with you on any current openings that may be available, but also marketing you if you have a specific skill set that if they feel you would add benefit to maybe a client that they currently have and they want to present you to their client. So there's both the active jobs that an executive recruiter would work with you on that they're aware of, but there's also the passive jobs that aren't advertised. And so that's the benefit of working with a recruiting firm, an executive recruiting firm, is that they can present you for both types of roles. We can do the same thing because we work on high-level physician openings. We present ourselves as a healthcare recruiting firm because that's all we do. Executive recruiters or executive headhunting firms, they may work in several different types of industries. They may have a healthcare component to it, but they may also work in several types of industries. I will provide a list of resources that you can go to that these actual firms that specialize in this area. But in working with them, I think.
Excuse me, please
Okay.
mute your microphone.
Scott,
Please
if you
mute your microphone.
that is controlled with Susan Jarvie. He said he's doing well on it, but he needs some new
Hello?
medications.
Okay.
Hello? Please,
He was
please.
most interested in the cyclobenzaprine for his back.
Okay.
He had an L5 spinal fusion, and he said that it's just
Please mute your microphone. Thank you. Go ahead. Mike, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Sorry.
perfect. That's all right. But going back to the executive search firms, you have to be prepared, meaning just when we just talked about the resume and the LinkedIn profile, that's the first thing that they're going to ask for is your most current resume. Do you have a LinkedIn profile? Some of these firms will actually help you, et cetera. A question has been asked, does it cost me? Should it cost me to work with these firms? I am very, I've got a very used to maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, there were a lot of firms that charged candidates. I honestly believe that, and there are firms out there that still do this. There are job boards out there that still do this, that say if you pay us $100 a month, you'll have access to jobs that no one else has. I personally don't, in today's environment, you don't have to pay to play, so to speak. You should not have to pay someone to try and get a position of any type. I just don't think it's necessary, even though there are some that still exist out there. But
So just to be clear, in terms of terminology, the client is the doctor in this case, is the doctor looking for a job.
correct.
No, I'm sorry, the client is the startup looking for a candidate. The candidate is the doctor looking for the job,
Correct.
for the client.
For the
So
client.
now in this conversation, most of the people on this call are probably people who are looking for side gigs. But some people in the audience might be startup founders who are looking for advisors. So there are two kinds of folks on this call. So from the perspective of the founder who is looking for an advisor, if they hire you, what do they pay? Somebody has to pay for this. It's not going to be the potential candidate. It's going to be the client who wants to hire someone, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And what we've seen are various ways to pay. Certainly an hourly rate, depending on what the expertise is probably the most popular. There's a per case base if you are doing medical reviews. Telehealth tends to be, if you're doing telehealth, tends to be on the per case basis. There's a defined rate for each case that you may be involved in. So it's going to vary across specialties. It's going to vary across the type of side gig, that you're doing. But I think a very important element of that is, and one of the things to avoid, and we talked about this earlier, Arlen, is a lot of these startups may want to trade on your expertise for equity position. And so you just have to be cautious sometimes in that case. We've ran across that in our practice, and we very rarely do we recruit for someone, a company, a client that is offering a equity type a position, et cetera.
Right. Okay.
I do
So
want
can
to
you
make
give it?
one more. I just
Go
want
ahead,
to
I'm
make
sorry.
one more. I just want to make one more comment about recruiting firms and headhunters. That I think is one of the things we hear complaints about all the time. If they love you for a role, if a headhunter or a recruiter loves you, you'll get emails, you'll get follow up, you'll get everything. Don't worry if they ghost you, because that happens a lot in our industry, which is unfortunate. And what I mean by ghosting naturally is they're not following up with you like they should. They're not keeping you aware of what's going on with the job, which I think is unfortunate. But there's no reason that you can't follow up with them, because it does happen more often than not that maybe you're not hearing back. And it could be a multitude of things. Clients drag their feet when it relates to hiring. They may say they have an immediate need, which they do, but for whatever reason, they will drag their feet on interviewing and hiring the person. So again, I just wanted to make that comment as we wrap up here, so you're not caught off guard.
Great. So maybe you can give us a brief example of how this works,
Well, we will
like a case study.
Yeah, a case study. And this is, and I'm only going to show this slide. I mention it because this was American Medical Association did this last year, and this was I want to do the 23% more so than anything. 23 of the physicians had said that they had been contacted by a recruiter. Number one, the research was it can be very difficult to contact a physician for a variety of reasons. And a lot of physicians don't utilize the other tools and job boards in recruiting firms like a lot of other healthcare professionals do. So it was interesting when we saw this, simply because then you're looking at 75% awareness that don't have an awareness of a particular role. So in us, meaning Alidium HR, and I'm going to assume a lot of healthcare recruiting firms do this also, we do proactive outreach. So that's why I had mentioned that it's very important to have a LinkedIn profile, because that's the first place anyone goes to. I also, in a professional position like a physician, I recommend you have a one-page landing page or website that shows your history and your background and experience. They're very easy to do, and they're very, very effective. It's an addition to the resume, but it's where someone can go and learn more about you aside from LinkedIn and your resume. But a lot of physicians, if you've got to create an awareness of yourself, and that's even by being proactive in contacting a company like ours or other types of physician recruiters that may not even be aware of you. So being prepared, contacting them proactively and asking them about certain positions. All these companies advertise on their website the job openings, but they're also, just like we are, they're also working on positions that we do not post because clients want to keep some opportunities confidential. So just don't look at it as that's all the jobs they have. Build a relationship with several recruiters. Don't go out and build relationships with multiple ones, but 2 or 3 recruiters that are specialists in this area that can, that know of companies that are hiring for these types of positions. That way they become comfortable with you, and as positions become available, they can make you aware of them. So that would be one of the things that I would strongly recommend is building relationships with several search firms, recruiting firms, so they get to know you.
So we have some limited time. We only have about 12 minutes left. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. One is, more than 50% of doctors now are employed by somebody. So the people that are listening to this call, if they're physicians, are probably working for an organization, private equity, corporate medicine, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you do this without your employer knowing that you're doing it?
Got to be, one of the things that we've always stressed, and anybody should stress if they're any type of reputable recruiting firm or executive search firm, is the confidentiality of the search, both from the recruiter side and from the client side. It's no different. Most everyone that comes to us is employed. So it's just known that it's confidential. We've never had an issue or a challenge with that. We have presented some candidates confidentially to our clients. So the physician has requested that the name not be released, but just specifics about their background and experience. And then if the client shows interest, then we go down that road. But reputation of any type of search or recruiting firm is really necessitated on confidentiality. So I'm not overly concerned. We've never had an instance in 10 years where a physician's current employer has found out that they're looking for a job.
Yeah. The reality is that most folks, I mean, we're talking about side gigs. Now, the side gig, which is by definition, we're saying is a supplement to your existing employment arrangement. And most doctors that are looking for a side gig, if they get one, they're not going to get the amount of money they want working as a doctor. In other words, if you're making X amount of money as a doctor, as an employed physician, but you want for whatever reason to supplement your income or get a side gig, you're not going to quit your day job to do a side gig. That's just exchanging one job for another. And in most instances, it's going to be less money than what you made as a doctor. So my point is that if you are an employed physician, you may, first of all, you may have some terms and conditions in your employment contract that precludes you from doing a side gig, particularly in academic medicine, to your point before, because every single dollar you make, wherever it comes from, typically is owned by the dean or by the academic institution, unless they say, yeah, that's okay. But even then, they may want to take a piece of the action, and the contract for a side gig may have to be negotiated through the academic medical center or the centralized practice plan, whatever the structure of the organization is. So this confidentiality thing kind of cuts both ways. In one sense, you don't want your employer to know you're doing this. In the other, you do, because it's not a good idea to ask for permission and forgiveness instead of permission. It creates a lot of heartburn. So I would just be transparent about it, depending on your situation. The second point I would make is that there's always the question of, how do I negotiate how much money I should make in a side gig? And you referred to that before. Typically, it's going to be cash, equity, or both. Some people will say, I don't want to work for equity. Other people will say, I only want to work for equity. Other people will say, I want both. It just depends on your stage of your career, your personal objectives, your lifestyle, what your mindset is. I mean, there's a whole bunch of variables. But when it comes to equity, very few doctors, and unfortunately, some startups, don't appreciate the ins and outs of awarding or receiving equity. By that, I mean options, stock, etc. There are tax consequences that go with that. There are fundraising consequences that go with that. So if you get into that conversation, talk to a trusted advisor, an accountant, a lawyer, somebody that can walk you through the ins and outs of giving and receiving options or stock grants as equity in exchange for your being an advisor or a consultant.
Yeah, that's a good point, Arlen. And a lot of these startups, especially the ones that started during COVID, a lot of them, we've seen some very big startups go out of business. But a lot of these startups, they're hiring the expertise. They're technical startups. They have a lot of them that we've worked with over the last 3 years. They have the technical expertise of what they want to do, but they lack the medical expertise, and that's why they are hiring or are doing a contract 1099 with physicians. So how does the healthcare knowledge or the medical knowledge, how do we enclave that with our technology? Teladoc, for all intents and purposes, is a technology company, even though they have a large staff of doctors. They're still, that their claim to fame is their technology, and we see this over and over again. One of the things I will mention on side gigs, the two highest paying side gigs that we run into are the legal consulting side of it and the part-time consulting side of this, as I just mentioned, with companies. Those certainly are ones that pay extremely well.
Right.
Side gig telehealth roles, you will not get what you normally would make as a practicing physician in a facility. But again, we have had physicians that have worked several side gigs, and their involvement there depending on the situation.
Right. So we would be remiss in the final minutes if we did not talk about artificial intelligence, because everybody else does on every other webinar. So how will is artificial intelligence impacting your business, and what candidates need to deal with? I'm referring specifically to facial recognition of your picture on a LinkedIn profile, or AI-driven interviews, where basically you're being interviewed by an avatar, or the demand certainly for artificial intelligence and healthcare competencies to inform the person that is trying to hire you. So how has the world changed now that we're in the world of things like ChatGPT?
Yeah, well, it's changed dramatically. We introduced 3 years ago an AI technology that we use internally that looks for, actively goes out and looks for specific types of professionals for specific roles that we're recruiting. We are just implementing now a intelligent recruiter, which, as you just mentioned, which is a almost feels like you are being interviewed by a live person. All these have a positive effect from the standpoint of finding and attracting candidates a lot quicker than what you used to be able to do. You used to go to a job board, post a job, and wait for the resumes to come in. But AI is creating more and more proactive search. And that's why I was mentioning earlier about the importance of social media in all of this. Is if it's positive social media, if you have yourself out there in these different groups and on LinkedIn, the better chance you're going to be discovered because of this AI technology that is going out and proactively recruiting passive candidates. Now, with physicians, we will not use at this time the intelligent recruiter because we're being cautious because of the level that a physician is at. It'd be like interviewing a CEO for a company and interviewing them with an intelligent recruiter. It just doesn't work. You have to look at the position that you're recruiting for before you even think about whether you want to use AI to interview that person. So we interview any physician. We interview in a Zoom call or on the phone. We do not use any type of AI technology, but we are heavily invested on the front end in attracting candidates for open positions using AI. I will send you, Arlen, actually yesterday or 2 days ago, McKinsey and Company. We all know McKinsey is one of the leading consulting groups. They had a great report coming out on AI in healthcare. And it wasn't just about recruiting, it was just AI and the impact that it was having right now and in the future in healthcare that I think is something that everyone should read. And I'll include that in with a lot of the documents
Yeah.
that I follow up with.
The final comment I would make is while we are suggesting you build a personal brand on platforms, including social media, in this day and age, you have to be concerned about cyber risk. So when you're exposing yourself on social media, I don't care whether it's LinkedIn or a podcast or a webinar or a newsletter or whatever it is, unfortunately, and this has to do with artificial intelligence, the question is artificial intelligence helping or hurting us in cybersecurity? Experts say yes. So you have to sort of be careful about what you say, what personal information you divulge. A typical example is that when you put up a LinkedIn profile, it's going to ask you, what is your contact information that you want to publicly display? Some people won't display an email address. A lot of people won't give away a cell phone number. Some will cite a website, and even that is precarious in some circumstances. So my point is, you have to be careful about how you use these things. And particularly on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, and you're taking pictures of, you're on vacation in Rome. Well, guess what? People know you're not home. So there are certain risks about doing all this stuff. And unfortunately, we have to be more careful about how we navigate these waters, because there's a lot of bad actors out there that'll do bad things.
Yeah,
So
LinkedIn.
I'm just giving you a heads up.
No, you're absolutely right. LinkedIn is strengthening their verification. They're now, and it's not on every new profile, but they will ask sometimes to verify that you are actually who you are, because there's so many fake profiles that have been created on LinkedIn because of AI, facial recognition, etc. A lot of people will not even post their picture anymore because of the concern about the technology and the ability to copy someone. So yeah, it is a concern, and it's going to continue to be a very big concern in the months ahead because AI is just getting smarter. There are more and more companies that are delivering technology out there. Some of it is very, very good and helpful, and some of it isn't. And it's just sort of defining what you want to share and what you don't want to share out on the World Wide Web, as we call it.
Well, we're out of time. I want to thank the Mike and the others for participating in this. So just one final thing, if people want more information, they can get in touch with you at the places that Brandon put up in the chat, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, we more than welcome anyone who has any questions, not only about this, but just any jobs that we may be working on, about your resume, anything we've discussed today. Please feel free to reach out. We'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Okay, well, thanks again to everybody. If you're interested in learning more about the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, I put up the website, soapnet.org, or you can contact me on LinkedIn. Have a good day, and thanks for your contribution.
All right, thank you.